التحديات الحالية للسلم والأمن والتنمية في إفريقيا ووضع توصيات وأدوات عملية مناسبة واستدامة السلام في إفريقيا وتوفير منصة Africa Agenda 2063 and providing a platform for all partners to find new innovative opportunities for future cooperation. Talking about the organizational structure of the forum, there has been an international advisory board formed comprised of international prominent figures to supervise the organization of this forum, and also Cairo International Center for Building Peace affiliate to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is playing the role of the Secretariat of the Forum.
Excellency, President El-Sisi, Honorable Heads of States, please allow me to speak in my mother tongue. فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس جمهورية مصر العربية ورئيس الاتحاد الأفريقي، السادة رؤساء الدول والحكومات، الحضور الكريم، أرحب بكم في الدورة الأولى لمنتدى أسوان للسلام والتنمية المستدامين. اسمي رامي رضوان، وأتشرف بأن أكون مقدم هذا المنتدى. منتدى أسوان يعقد تحت عنوان أجندة السلام والأمن والتنمية المستدامة في أفريقيا.
Which deals with consistent relationship between peace and development, consolidate African solutions, and generate new approaches for the future. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, your honorable delegates, indeed Africa has immense natural resources. It has at least half of the fastest growing economies of the world. It's rich in resources and is riding a wave of urbanization, industrialization, and economic diversification. Its importance in the global economy is rising, both as a market and as an engine for global growth. Moreover, the continent is the youngest region of the world. So now it is the duty of all African countries to promote cooperation, to consolidate their natural resources, to meet the aspirations of the African peoples in all fields. Now we are going to introduce a short film on the process of integration and African unity.
This decade is the decade of African independence. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
I am proud that Africa is taking the giant step forward that she is taking today.
Our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our staff.
This meeting could not have been more timely. As the new era begins, it calls for both ideas and action. It is the leaders of nations engaged in joint deliberations who can address not only the apparent problems, but also the frustrations and fears that underline them.
I believe that a new era is now in prospect. Africa's third wave. Let us make this third wave one of lasting peace, based on democracy, human rights, and sustainable development.
Africa is rich and not poor. The creation of unity and community between the three African states in a unified African economic plan.
Africa is fulfilling the dream that was crafted by the founders of the OAU more than 60 years ago, when they conceptualized the formation of an integrated Africa.
That Africa is open for business. The opportunities are there. You know, when people look at Africa, think of the population, think of the middle class, think of the huge opportunities to invest across borders, not just limited by the boundaries of borders.
10 مشروعات لكل إقليم، 50 مشروع قاري من شأنهم أن يغيروا شكل القارة ومستقبل القارة في أسرع وقت ممكن.
السيدات والسادة أرجو من سيادتكم الترحيب.
Ladies and gentlemen, I should like with you now to welcome His Excellency Sameh Shoukry, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Arab Republic of Egypt. In the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate, Your Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of the Republic of Egypt, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of African countries, in the presence of His Excellency President Sisi and his brothers, African leaders, it is my honor to attend the first session of the Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and Development, which is being placed under the patronage of His Excellency, being interested in expansion of common African action in order to meet the aspirations, the present and the future aspirations of the African peoples. The idea of the Aswan Forum had emerged as we believed in the importance of having a continental international platform to consolidate the link between the state of peace and sustainable development, as all African countries are doing their best in order to achieve these goals. The idea of the forum, turning it into an integrated plan of action, had been resting on the ideas that had been addressed by the forum and the inclusiveness of its agenda, with being open to cooperate with our regional and international partners. Hence, the idea of choosing the agenda and the title of this conference, which is interested in sustainable peace and development. Our meeting is taking place along with the implementation of many African and international goals, including the goal 2020, in addition to the initiative of the African Union, silencing guns by the year 2020. And the international arena is marked with the emergence of the initiative of the Secretary General to act for peace. No doubt that our dear continent, given the priorities to establish peace, require concerted efforts in order to express our viewpoints as to this approach and initiative, in order to complement international and African efforts to identify priorities and the steps needed in order to achieve realization of these aims. This forum had been preceded by consistent efforts over many months in order to develop the ideas that are being reflected on this forum. Foreign Ministry had organized 5 workshops on conflict prevention, preservation of peace and security, and initiatives on women empowerment, resolution of conflicts, and how to get out of extremism which leads to terrorism. We've combined all output of the different workshops into the agenda of the Aswan Forum, which you have now and which will be the axis and basis of discussion in the forum. Over 2 days, the forum will have an interactive discussion among the participants on relevant African efforts in order to work out a framework to operationalize the ideas. Many sessions in the forum will be dealing with the security challenges facing Africa, and we're going to review efforts, international as well as African, in order to consolidate peace and stability in Africa, and to put an end to all kinds of conflicts, and to operationalize the initiative of the African continent for silencing guns by the year 2020, in addition to facing up many challenges that are confronting our continent. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to have this session of the Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and development. I'm sure that the discussion that will take place here will lead us to come up with serious and concrete ideas and recommendations to consolidate African efforts in order to consolidate peace in the continent and to achieve consistent progress. In addition to understanding the views of our partners as to Africa. And I'm sure that this will open up new vistas for constructive discussions that would lead into further sessions of the forum in light of the warmth weather of Aswan. In conclusion, I should like to express my great appreciation for the presence of His Excellency President Sisi for this in this forum, along with the presence of our African leaders. This kind of high-level representation will be enriching indeed our discussion and shows how Egypt attaches great importance to this forum in order to boost all efforts that would lead our continent to achieve the aspirations and objectives of our peoples, to hold the place that is suitable for this continent internationally. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Peace be upon you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Minister Shukri, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, kindly applaud and hail His Excellency, the President of Egypt, President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi, and the Chair of the African Union. The floor is yours, Your Excellency. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, ladies and excellencies and dignitaries, presidents and heads of states and governments, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I am pleased to welcome you all on the launching of the first session of Aswan Forum for peace, sustainable and for peace and sustainable development. This forum is launched today from Aswan, the Egypt's at the south border of Egypt. It is the bridge which connects Egypt to the continent, and it is an internal bond of fraternity where our common African destinations come across together. Within the context of this forum, we probe the challenges encountering us in Africa, the top of which is the stability of and peace and security and achievement of sustainable development that we all aspire to, in addition to the protection of our African societies and countries against the expansion of terrorism and relevant phenomenon, the most dangerous of which is the smuggling and the widespread of arms, illegal migration and forced displacement. It is incumbent upon us to deal with great responsibility with the adverse repercussions of climate change, which exacerbated desertification, water scarcity and natural resources. All of this come at a time while our peoples would deem peace, security, prosperity, and development are one aspect of human rights, and they must enjoy them as the rest of the world's peoples. Ladies and gentlemen, encountering such challenges require concerted efforts based on the instilled African principle that is to solve the African problems by African minds. This was a great drive for the African leaders over the past years to endeavor to avoid specific strategies and plans that would fulfill the aspirations of the African peoples in all spheres. through continuing discussions, Africa managed to fulfill Agenda 2063, which fulfill the needs of the sons of the continent. The AU also adopted the initiative of silencing the guns by 2020, which aims at eliminating and eradicating all forms of conflicts and disputes in the continent by 2020. Clear executive framework will be developed to find a remedy to the root causes of conflicts and contribute to peace building and development. The putting into effect and enforcement of the initiative is a cornerstone for the stability realization all over the continent through the building of the national institutions and the empowerment of national institutions and helping the peoples to be unleashed towards prosperity and development. Perhaps I wouldn't conceal that the availability of the political will by the leaders and the improvement of the standards of living by peoples and prevention of future conflicts reiterates our underscores our commitment to the plan of the continent. Out of this context, Egypt believes the optimum way for stability in the Africa and all over the world is to address the root causes menacing peace and to prevention of the eruption of war and conflicts, especially through the preventive diplomacy and mediation in order to settle disputes that might arise amongst countries. Ladies and gentlemen, within this framework, it is important to underscore the concerted regional effort and international efforts and to support and strengthen peace, African peace and security based on the principle of the sovereignty of states and the pivotal role played by states in forging peace and development plans according to national priorities to inculcate the national ownership of those efforts. A realization of peace and sustainability of durable peace wouldn't be realized unless through an enhancement of the capability of the states to have a full territorial sovereignty and also to be empower all their national institutions. The national state is the base for that ensures security and peace. Our vision of Africa wouldn't be completed about the reality and the better tomorrow unless we give the well-deserved position for women and youth. Speaking about women empowerment and youth integration and engagement at all levels and different fields should be translated into implemented policies and to overcome the difficulties for which we are mobilizing efforts and to fulfill our great aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware of the profound relationships between development, stability, and the peace and security in our continent. If we have ever could to overcome some difficulties and obstacles to peace and development, the success of our sustainable efforts require more and more of the concerted efforts and intensified efforts in order to go into the pace of the realization of development. So today, this is a step forward on that path. In our meeting in the Aswan Forum, this unique gathering, a regional and continental platform of discussion, deliberations, and dialogue, experience sharing, and expertise sharing, we are confident that the proceedings of the conference and would strengthen the endeavors of the continent towards durable and sustainable peace and security by the complementary efforts and also for building peace and preventive diplomacy and mediation and also the efforts of addressing the root causes of the crises. we were keen to have a purely African forum in terms of the theme, the preparation, the organization, as well as the program and the sessions. Aswan Forum expresses the ownership of the continent sons to their destiny and also embodies their involvement and interest in their African affair. This is the key guarantee that the forum addresses the problems of the crisis and also to demonstrate the potential solutions and in order to have harmony with partnership with the international partners on a win-win basis. So for this thoroughly thrashed out ideas should be reflected into a concrete reality. Now we are in a dire need to enforce the framework policy of Africa for the reconstruction and development in post-conflict area and to be translated into executive plans that would immune the states against any setback in disputes and also to ensure capacity building of the institutions to be able to do its task and to contribute to the prosperity and the welfare of their peoples. Hence, we all look forward to signing the African Center of Reconstruction and Development in post-conflict areas hosted in Egypt. We aim that it would be a collective platform and a mastermind that would work and focus on the program for countries to evade their conflicts, and it would observe the specificity of each country and would help it and enable it to development and reconstruction. I cannot, in the conclusion, but welcome you to Aswan Forum and express my pleasure for your deliberations, and I wish you fruitful and constructive deliberations that would contribute to the realization of the efforts of the peace and sustainable development. This is the right to the entire continent in order to have the well-deserved position amongst the globe. Thank you and peace be upon you.
شكرا. كلمة سيادتكم والتي بها.
Thank you, President Sisi, for your speech. And now we announce the start of the Aswan Forum on Sustainable Peace and Security. Given the importance of this meeting, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, thought that he had to take part in this important discussion. Now we're going to listen to a recorded message by His Excellency.
And I thank Egypt for convening this gathering on peace and development in Africa. Sustainable, inclusive development is essential to fulfilling Africa's enormous potential. It is also the most effective way to address underlying causes of conflict, tackle the climate crisis, and build resilient communities and societies. Both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union's Agenda 2063 recognize the interlinkage between development and peace. And the African Union Silencing the Guns by 2020 initiative underscores the role of prevention. Our joint efforts have led to important advances. This work has also demonstrated the importance of meaningful participation by women and young people. I'm strongly committed to helping change the narrative about Africa, so that Africa is rightly seen for its dynamism and enormous potential as a continent of opportunity. I look forward to continued collaboration based on mutual respect and support, and wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished participants, now we're starting the first session. Africa that we want, sustainable peace, development, discussion with African leaders. Now I should like to call upon His Excellency President Sisi of the Arab Republic of Egypt and Chairperson of the African Union to come over to the
and the Chairperson of the African Union Commission to join us on stage. His Excellency President Idriss Déby, President of the Republic of Chad. His Excellency President Mohamedou Issoufou, President of the Republic of Niger. His Excellency President Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal. His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. His Excellency President Asuman Azali, President of the Union of Comoros. And His Excellency Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. I would also like to invite Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary of the United Nations, to take the stage and facilitate the session. Your Excellency, the stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Your Excellency, our Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, Presidents, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me begin by commending the President of the Arab Republic for convening the Aswan Forum on Sustainable Peace and Security and Development in Africa. And I also welcome our very distinguished panel this morning. Today we talk about the Africa we want, and to talk about that means the 2063 Agenda, which integrates the 2030 Agenda, the SDGs, on our global roadmap for the world we want. In Agenda 2063, African heads of state and government have set a really bold vision to deliver an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international global scene. Agenda 2063 lays out 7 key aspirations for Africa: inclusive growth, sustainable development, good governance and respect for human rights, a strong cultural identity, people-driven development, and an Africa that is a global player and partner. Excellencies, today, Africa's potential is immense, but it's not yet fully realized. Today, the continent is home to at least half of the fastest-growing economies in the world. It is rich in resources and is riding a wave of urbanization, industrialization, and economic diversification. Its importance in the global economy is rising both as a market and as an engine of global growth. Moreover, the continent is the youngest region of the world. And by 2030, 1 in every 5 people in the world will live in Africa. This great promise, however, is under threat, undermined by a myriad of crises, challenges, and risks to peace, security, and development, which include conflict, terrorism, and climate change. In the face of these challenges, Africa's ownership will be indispensable. It is indeed the responsibility of this generation of African leaders, policymakers, and intellectuals to provide the homegrown solutions that the continent so desperately needs to protect present and secure future generations to come. This session is a stage setter from which African leaders will lay out their visions for Africa that can unleash its enormous potential for sustaining peace and prosperity. As Africa implements the objectives of the 2063 Agenda, we can already observe concrete progress towards these goals, from successful constitutional transfers of power in countries like Mali, Nigeria, Madagascar, to rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. In the Central African Republic, the political agreement for peace and reconciliation, facilitated by the African Union with the support of the United Nations and ECAS, has led to significant progress in the re-establishment of security structures and improved humanitarian access. In Sudan, a civilian-led transition government established last August after the successful facilitation of Ethiopia and the African Union has prioritized peace across Sudan and the progress in economic recovery. African leaders are also living up to the AU reforms, looking at financing and self-reliance, with African members of state contributing millions to the African Union Peace Fund. Meanwhile, the vibrant partnership between the UN and the African Union is growing stronger every day. Our partnership is underpinned by shared values and the principles of complementarity, respect for African leadership and ownership. African problems require African solutions. We know that progress, development and peace in Africa will not be achieved without the full engagement of the other half of our population, our women and our girls. And we are intensifying efforts to ensure the participation and leadership of women in political processes, including through the African Women Leaders Network, of which I've had the privilege of co-leading with the African Union Special Envoy, Binta Diop. As much as we note the progress across the continent, we must also confront the very real political, economic, and social challenges. Political, social, economic exclusion and discrimination, governance issues, the loss of trust of the majority of our people in institutions and public sector services. All of these are critical to building lasting peace and equality for the peoples across Africa. We see this playing out in the Sahel. Proxy conflicts, intercommunal violence, and organized crime are exacerbating factors that must be addressed with collective resolve and action. It is only this way that we will stop the alarming spread of violent extremism and terrorism on the continent. In particular, the youth of Africa need positive, constructive opportunities for income, leadership, and social justice. That means education and 21st century skill sets leverage their enormous energy, their aspirations. We need their creativity and their innovation. And in expanding that opportunity, we need to implement Agenda 2063 and leverage new initiatives as the African Continental Free Trade Area at every level and at scale urgently. We must also address the impact of climate change, degradation of natural environment and food insecurity in Africa that is manifesting through floods, hurricanes, humanitarian crises, and widespread internal displacement. It is going to be important that investing in infrastructure will be critical to energy transitions and to transportation and greening our cities. Excellencies, let me conclude by posing two questions to our distinguished panel. In the first instance, as we look at inclusion, how can Africa harness its enormous untapped potential, youth, women, and others on the margins of our societies, to better address the threats and challenges to realizing inclusive economic growth, development, peace, and security? On the second question, underscoring the reforms of the African Union, this presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity for strategic reflection and foresight. And here we ask, how can this opportunity be best used to realize the organization's Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena? Two easy questions, Your Excellencies. First, I have the honor to invite His Excellency, President of the Republic of Chad, to deliver his remarks. Your Excellency, you have the floor. President Idriss Déby.
Monsieur le Président,
President Sisi of the Arab Republic of Egypt and Chair of the African Union, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I should like to express to the African leaders, to His Excellency the Arab Republic of Egypt, our most deep thanks for inviting us to this forum, and I should like to congratulate His Excellency President Sisi for the initiative he has undertaken in order to organize meetings like this one.
Africa we want.
Africa that we are looking forward to.
Africa we want.
This African Forum on Sustainable Peace and Development is indeed adequate and timely, and it reflects the close relationship between peace, security, and development. Indeed, it is not possible to achieve peace and stability or development. Africa is indeed rich in natural resources. African peoples have immense potentials. 7 out of 10 countries in the world that are heading on the way of development belong to the African continent. This shows that investments would indeed be achieving profits for Africa. Africa needs nothing to achieve progress, even with the existence of old colonialism, which sometimes lead to some strifes and conflicts, and which cause underdevelopment. Despite this negative image, despite the violence and poverty in Africa, which sometimes are exaggerated by certain media, however, this could be overcome through continental initiatives undertaken by the African Union. The building of peace and security in order to avert conflicts and agendas on sustainable development, and also the emergence of African free trade zones. All this give rise to great hopes. Excellencies, all these are basic tools that could lead to development and overcome problems that lead to certain catastrophic incidents in certain African countries, in addition to what happens in the African Sahel. This call for doubling our efforts for development. Terrorist gangs and groups and criminal groups that are engaged in trafficking arms, those who enjoy immense financial possibilities. These groups and gangs have been in control of many areas in our African countries and in the African Sahel. Given this great challenge, we have to double our efforts in order to cope with them. We have to think of procedures and measures in order to confront
these threats depending upon our own force and the assistance provided by our partners. I should like to pay tribute to joint efforts to the member countries of the southern region in order to confront the Boko Haram, this terrorist group. Despite all its great might, at the same time, we note with great appreciation the initiative undertaken in connection with the African Sahel, providing it with the necessary equipment and arms. We also pay tribute to the efforts of CEDEAO provided during the summit conference that took place last September in order to raise $1 billion in order to put an end to that terrorist challenge in that region. We are aware of the fact that terrorists have so much power. They are in possession of advanced technology in terms of data and information. They've got all the means that allow them to make use young African youth, given the lack of experience. Lack of necessary material means allow certain terrorist groups to advance their plans. Given the continued presence of terrorism, we have got to develop plans in order to confront these threats. In this respect, a collective response could indeed allow us to put an end to this menace. This approach takes into consideration the strategy of threats and these destructive ideas. That's why we have to pool all our efforts at various levels, African and international levels, also in the area of the media, making advantage of all possible means available. In this respect, we ask for developed consultation of the efforts at the level of the African Sahel, including MINUSMA, Markan, and cooperation among African leaders. Indeed, it's important that the infected countries should acknowledge facts and the fact that they need certain assistance, and it is our duty to provide them with all the necessary assistance, particularly in the area of security. Our Sahel countries dedicate about 18 to 32% of the GDP for security purposes. In this respect, in alignment with CEDEAO, the 5 Sahel countries and the Committee on River Basins and the African Commission and all countries of determination, they should all pool their internal and external resources in order to consolidate efforts in Al-Sahel region. Anything else will be of no use and the terrorist gangs will continue. Peace and security are the basis for our life. In order to be able to engage in real development, we have to consolidate every possible means in order to operationalize all our means in order to cope with the new challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the Libyan crisis is one of the key sources of the continued crises in Al-Sahel region. Hence, the settlement of this crisis is indispensable in order to face up to these terrorist groups in Al-Sahel region. Efforts being exerted by groups in Al-Sahel region vis-à-vis external interventions aggravate the situation. The situation becomes really tragic. In order to resolve this problem, this crisis that had been going on, we believe that it is up to the Libyans themselves to do so. We must give them the chance to discuss things together in order to come up with a reconciliation. Return of peace in Libya would indeed mean peace in Al-Sahel region. That's why we stress the importance of urgent solution to the Libyan crisis. As for regional matters like the African Union and the neighboring countries, we believe that everybody will have to double their efforts with United Nations and the Arab League being involved. Libya should get out of this crisis. Libya have to agree on a reconciliation. Efforts are inadequate in order to bring back peace in Libya. That's our opinion. Also, the impact of climate change that we feel hard in Africa. And what we feel in Al-Sahel region is a continuation of desertification, water scarcity in rivers, scarcity in rainfalls, drought, high temperatures, inadequate agricultural produce, degradation of land, particularly agricultural land. All these are very detrimental to raising cattle, to fishing and hunting, agriculture, and aggravate poverty. The environment and dealing with the environment should help us meet these challenges. If we see that the advanced countries are not coming up with necessary assistance to the poor countries, then the African countries themselves should get together in order to consolidate their efforts to face up to climate challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, indeed Africa abounds in natural resources. It has got all the necessary resources. With implementation of the 2063 agenda, by providing all the necessary potentialities to implement regional and continental projects, particularly in areas of energy, river, and electricity. In this respect, industrialization is extremely important to counteract to economic underdevelopment and inadequacy. Africa that we're looking forward to is Africa of peace, security, sustainable development, to implement priorities of the 2063 agenda. All this had to be placed into the basic and key strategy for development so that Africa should indeed be integrated. Thank you.
In particular for underscoring the necessity for us to change the narrative for Africa, implementing AU initiatives, but also investing in our youth and their development so that we stop the slide and losing them to terrorism. May I crave the indulgence of our leaders that we keep within the 5-minute allocated remarks so that we can have some time to engage the audience that we have in front of us. It's now my honor and pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency Macky Sall, the President of the Republic of Senegal.
Je vous remercie.
I would like to thank you. I would like to also to express my warm thanks to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of the Republic of Egypt, for his initiative on the invitation of Aswan Forum. I would like equally to thank and congratulate him for his leadership of the African.
Nous devons avoir conscience que l'Afrique est en marche, malgré les difficultés, en particulier la question terroriste, qui est en train de poser de sérieuses difficultés au développement du continent. Nous devons noter avec satisfaction les progrès importants que l'Afrique est en train de réaliser dans sa marche vers le développement et vers l'émergence. C'est cela la réalité. Deuxième constat, le continent évidemment est capable de trouver des solutions à ces problèmes, y compris pour les problèmes de sécurité. Malheureusement, l'Afrique subit les effets et les influences négatives qui lui sont extérieures. C'est le cas de la Libye, on l'a dit. Les conséquences sont graves sur la sécurité dans le Sahel et dans le bassin du lac Tchad. Il est important que les solutions globales tiennent compte des solutions africaines. On ne peut pas continuer à accepter que la recherche de règlement du conflit en Libye écarte l'Union africaine. Et si l'Union africaine avait été écoutée, le problème libyen ne serait pas posé de cette façon. Donc, à Dakar récemment, dans le cadre du forum de Dakar pour la paix et la sécurité en Afrique, l'une des thématiques majeures a été la relation entre le volet international et le volet régional dans la gestion des conflits en Afrique. On ne peut pas faire la paix à notre place. On doit certes nous accompagner. Le président Déby l'a dit. Nous accompagner, c'est dans la recherche de moyens, dans la mobilisation et surtout dans la coordination des opérations lorsqu'il s'agit d'intervenir militairement. Mais cela doit s'appuyer d'abord sur les efforts africains. On ne peut pas, dans la région du Sahel, comme dans le bassin du lac Tchad, où des pays se battent quotidiennement, le Nigeria, qui fournit des efforts énormes, le Tchad, qui a vraiment fait des sacrifices très importants, d'abord en vie humaine, mais également en budget, pour accompagner la lutte contre le terrorisme dans le Sahel. Ce sont des pays donc qui vivent la lutte
au quotidien tout effort, que ce soit les efforts de la CEDEAO en tant que région, les efforts de l'Union africaine, les efforts des Nations unies, tout comme les efforts des partenaires extérieurs comme Barkhane pour ce qui concerne la zone du Sahel, ces efforts doivent s'appuyer et doivent venir appuyer les efforts nationaux et africains. Je pense que ça, c'est devenu vital et il serait heureux que les conclusions du forum d'Aswan puissent insister sur cet aspect entre le volet régional des solutions et le volet international. Un autre élément important que je voudrais également appuyer, nous avons beaucoup discuté récemment sur les missions des Nations Unies pour la paix, pour le maintien de la paix. La paix, on la maintient quand elle est sur place. Au Sahel et dans le bassin du lac Tchad, nous n'en sommes pas encore là. Nous devons imposer la paix par tous les moyens, y compris par des moyens militaires. Donc il s'agit de mobiliser les efforts, les énergies, les hommes, la coordination pour ramener la paix au Sahel et en Afrique. Ça me paraît être extrêmement vital. Maintenant, sur la question du développement, il est clair qu'il ne peut pas y avoir de développement sans paix. Mais le développement du continent, là aussi, je dirais que l'Afrique n'est pas pauvre. On l'a vu dans le film qui a été projeté. C'est un continent qui a toujours été le réservoir du monde. Réservoir en minerais, réservoir en énergie, réservoir en ressources humaines. Nous devons faire en sorte que nos ressources naturelles soient rémunérées à leur juste prix. Nous devons agir ensemble au niveau continental pour que l'impôt dû à l'Afrique dans le cadre de l'exploitation des ressources et de ses valorisations, que cet impôt soit payé sur le continent. L'OCDE a montré que sur l'année 2018, l'aide publique au développement sur l'ensemble du continent est autour de 29,7 milliards de dollars, alors que nous perdons en évasion fiscale entre 40 et 80 milliards de dollars. Donc si la rémunération était faite correctement en Afrique, si on bannissait les congés fiscaux et tout ce qui est évasion fiscale, l'Afrique n'aurait pas besoin d'aide publique au développement. Et ce combat, nous devons le mener ensemble. L'autre aspect, c'est que pour se développer, il faut s'endetter. Évidemment, il faut de la bonne dette. Mais pour s'endetter, nous sommes bloqués par les critères de la dette. Nous sommes handicapés par la classification et la notation qui nous est faite, considérant que l'Afrique est un continent à risque, ce qui n'est pas avéré. Nous imposons donc le paiement de primes d'assurance élevées qui renchérissent et le crédit et l'investissement pour l'Afrique. Nous l'avons dit, nous voulons que l'Union africaine, là aussi, porte ce combat. Et j'ai l'intention, au mois de février, de faire une proposition de résolution à l'Union africaine pour que les conditions de la dette soient renégociées, puisque ces conditions, à travers le consensus de Washington, ne sont pas favorables pour le développement de l'Afrique, ne sont pas favorables pour la prospérité du continent. Donc, avec nos partenaires, il faut qu'on redéfinisse de nouvelles règles pour nous permettre, comme tous les autres continents, d'avoir accès à des ressources longue durée qui feront en sorte que la pauvreté sera bannie en Afrique, que l'Afrique sera construite, modernisée à l'instar de tous les autres continents. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and for underscoring that we need to build capacities for our solutions, but these also need to be supported by both regional and global leadership, making an example of the Sahel, without which that threatens the implementation of 2063, but also the global implementation of 2030. It is now my privilege and honor to invite His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to make his remarks.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to make my contribution by asking the first question: how can the continent live up to the aspirations of the Agenda 2063 by tapping into its enormous potentials and overcoming myriads of threats and challenges to realizing peace and security? My answer is Africa should embark on the provision of transport connectivity by enhancing the development of road, rail, and air links, which will ease the free movement of persons, goods, and services within the continent. In this regard, we in Nigeria have already commenced an aggressive drive to upgrade our rail transport system and road networks across the country. We are also pursuing the diversification of our economy through the development of agriculture and mineral resources, the promotion of manufacturing sector, and the creation of job opportunities for our teeming youth. By so doing, we will also discourage the irregular migration of our youth out of the continent through dangerous journeys. We should furthermore promote free trade within and amongst Africa and Africans, especially now that we have launched the Free Trade Area Agreement. Africa needs to intensify the fight against corruption. The menace of corruption undermines our efforts to achieve sustainable development and realize the goals of AU Agenda 2063. It is also important to attach great priority to the promotion of good and inclusive governance, as well as equally strive to empower our women and youth. As Africans, it is important to focus on the issue of conflict prevention and resolution. Conflicts have devastating effects on our societies, and they militate against our progress. In this regard, the need to silence the guns cannot be overemphasized. The issue of climate change should be given the due attention that it deserves. The effect of climate change is at the root of some of the conflicts in parts of the continent. This is why we must focus on the issue of the recharging of Lake Chad, which used to provide livelihood to over 40 million people in the region. It is difficult to expect durable stability in the region without the restoration of the shrinking lake. My second question, ongoing reform efforts of the African Union presents a once-in-generational opportunity for strategic reflection and organizational renewal. We are the key reforms that will bring the organization closer to realizing its Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, peaceful African driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. The answer in our efforts to accelerate African integration, we in Nigeria have already taken the strategic decision to bring down barriers that have hindered the free movement of our people within the continent by introducing the issuance of visa as the point of entry into Nigeria to all persons holding passports of African countries with effect from January 2020. Nigeria is of a strong opinion that Africa must take its destiny into its own hand by minimizing reliance on donor funding for the execution of its vital peace, security, and development agenda. In this regard, Nigeria has been funding by almost 100% the operation of the multinational joint task force fighting Boko Haram terrorists in the Lake Chad Basin. Nigeria is not only host to our sub-regional body ECOWAS, but has also been supporting substantially the ECOWAS budget up to about 60%. as a key tool for the transformation and repositioning of our continent. Africa would need to heavily invest in education and capacity building. Education creates opportunities and holds the key for a better and prosperous future. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and also for the focus on investing in key infrastructure that enables us to have inclusive growth, creating jobs for a large cohort of youth, but also tackling climate change and implementing the CFTA. Your Excellencies, I now have the pleasure to give the floor to President Mohamedou Issoufou of the Republic of Niger.
Bien, merci, Madame. Je voudrais à mon tour remercier le président El-Sisi pour l'invitation qu'il nous a adressée à participer au présent forum d'Aswan sur le développement, la sécurité et la paix en Afrique. L'Afrique que nous voulons. Et ce titre d'Afrique que nous voulons est exactement celui de l'agenda 2063. L'agenda 2063, l'Afrique que nous voulons, une Afrique prospère, une Afrique intégrée, une Afrique en paix, une Afrique dirigée par ses propres citoyens. Déjà dans la vision de l'agenda 2063, une liaison étroite est faite entre les questions de développement et les questions de sécurité. Il n'y a pas de sécurité sans développement, de la même façon qu'il n'y a pas de développement sans sécurité. C'est évident. S'agissant du développement, cela a été dit, l'Afrique abrite la moitié des pays dont les économies sont les plus dynamiques dans le monde. Et cela peut être amplifié, justement, par la mise en œuvre de différents programmes de l'agenda 2063. Je voudrais rappeler ici que notre objectif, dans le cadre de cet agenda, sur le plan économique, c'est de réaliser un taux de croissance minimum de 7%. Et cela est à notre portée. Notre objectif, c'est que cette croissance de 7% soit une croissance inclusive, une croissance qui puisse permettre d'éradiquer la pauvreté, de lutter contre les inégalités. Cela est à notre portée, compte tenu du potentiel de ressources dont recèle le continent. Ressources naturelles, ressources minières, ressources énergétiques, mais aussi ressources humaines. Cela a été dit, en 2030, l'Afrique abritera 20% de la population mondiale, et en 2100, l'Afrique représentera 40% de la population mondiale, et avec l'avantage que cette population soit une population très jeune, avec l'avantage d'avoir un actif démographique extrêmement important, contrairement aux vieux pays qui ont plutôt un passif démographique extrêmement important. Tout ça, c'est des atouts qui nous permettront effectivement de réaliser nos ambitions avec 7% minimum de taux de croissance. Cette ambition est réalisable aussi si nous arrivons à mettre en œuvre tous les plans et programmes prévus dans l'agenda 2063. Premier plan et programme, c'est la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine qui est entrée en vigueur au mois de juillet dernier à Niamey et qui sera effectivement mise en œuvre à partir du mois de juillet 2020. Et j'espère que toutes les dispositions vont être prises pour qu'il soit effectivement ainsi. Bien sûr, la zone de libre-échange continentale ne sera complète que dans la mesure où les autres protocoles qui doivent l'accompagner sont négociés et adaptés. Il s'agit du protocole sur les investissements, il s'agit du protocole sur la concurrence, il s'agit du protocole également sur la propriété intellectuelle. Cela me paraît important. Donc si nous arrivons à mettre en œuvre la zone de libre-échange continentale, cela permettra d'amplifier les possibilités de croissance sur le continent. Mais cela ne suffit pas, parce que la zone de libre-échange continentale serait une coquille vide si on n'arrivait pas à mettre en œuvre les programmes sectoriels qui sont prévus par l'agenda 2063. C'est le cas, par exemple, du programme des infrastructures en Afrique. L'Afrique a besoin d'infrastructures ferroviaires. L'Afrique a besoin d'infrastructures énergétiques. Et pas n'importe quelle énergie, pas n'importe quelle infrastructure énergétique. Il nous faudra avoir de l'énergie à faible coût pour être compétitif. Je donne un exemple. Aujourd'hui, le coût moyen du kilowattheure en Afrique est de 14 centimes du dollar. Alors que dans les pays de l'Asie, le coût moyen du kilowattheure est de 4 centimes du dollar. Bien sûr, dans ces conditions, l'Asie sera plus compétitive que l'Afrique avec de tels coûts de l'énergie. Donc il faut qu'on investisse dans les sources d'énergie qui puissent nous permettre d'avoir de l'énergie à faible coût, ce qui permettra de rendre les économies africaines compétitives par rapport aux autres économies du monde. L'Afrique doit aussi mettre en œuvre le programme de développement industriel. Parce que souvent on dit que l'Afrique est riche de ses matières premières, mais en réalité l'Afrique reste pauvre en dépit de l'immensité de ces matières premières, parce que ces matières premières ne sont pas transformées sur place. Donc il faut transformer nos matières premières. Les pays qui produisent le cacao doivent faire du chocolat. Les pays qui produisent de la bauxite doivent faire de l'aluminium. Il faut transformer les matières premières, avoir le contrôle davantage de moyens des chaînes de valeur au niveau de ces matières premières. C'est ça qui permettra à l'Afrique effectivement de s'enrichir et c'est ça qui permettra à l'Afrique de donner des emplois à sa jeunesse qui est nombreuse aujourd'hui, qui est malheureusement victime de la migration clandestine, qui va mourir en Méditerranée, qui va mourir dans le désert, dans le cadre de la migration clandestine. Pour mettre fin à ça, il faut industrialiser l'Afrique. C'est ça qui permettra à l'Afrique d'avoir des emplois abondants pour sa jeunesse. Donc, je pense que l'agenda 2063 mis en œuvre permettra à l'Afrique d'atteindre ses objectifs, mais pour cela, il faut des ressources. Parce que pour faire un taux de croissance minimum de 7%, il nous faudra un taux d'investissement en Afrique, dans chacun de nos pays, de moins 24%. C'est par rapport à quoi on est loin aujourd'hui. Dans beaucoup de pays, le taux d'investissement est inférieur à 20%. Il faut donc aller au minimum vers un taux d'investissement de 24%. Mais pour cela, il faut des ressources. Le président Macky tout à l'heure a parlé des possibilités en ce qui concerne la dette. Mais en plus de la dette, il faut qu'au niveau du continent, au niveau des pays du continent, qu'on mobilise les ressources internes. Je crois que dans beaucoup de pays, l'objectif de mobilisation des ressources internes est de 20% par rapport au PIB. Il me semble qu'il faut aller au-delà de cela. Il faut viser un objectif de 24 à 30% du PIB pour avoir les ressources nécessaires qui puissent nous permettre de réaliser nos ambitions de développement économique et social. Il faut aussi, bien sûr, attirer les investissements directs étrangers. C'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, l'Afrique reçoit des ressources en matière d'aide publique au développement. Le président Macky l'a dit tout à l'heure, c'est 29 milliards. C'est une goutte d'eau dans les besoins de financement de l'Afrique. Pour financer, par exemple, les ODD à l'horizon 2030, l'Afrique a besoin chaque année de 600 milliards de dollars. Or, l'aide publique au développement pour l'Afrique, c'est 29 milliards de dollars. Le président Macky l'a rappelé tout à l'heure. Donc il nous faut, en plus des ressources internes, en plus de l'aide publique au développement, il nous faut mobiliser les investissements directs étrangers. Et je sais que dans beaucoup de pays africains, nous faisons beaucoup d'efforts pour améliorer le climat des affaires afin d'attirer justement les investissements directs étrangers. Voilà une autre piste qui nous permettra effectivement de mobiliser les ressources qu'il faut et qui nous permettront de réaliser nos objectifs de développement. D'ailleurs, il y a un élément qui est très encourageant, c'est que pour la première fois en 2017, les investissements directs étrangers ont été supérieurs à l'aide publique au développement. J'espère que cette tendance va se renforcer, cette tendance va se poursuivre et qu'on aura davantage d'investissements directs étrangers et donc davantage de commerce pour le continent. On peut d'ailleurs envisager d'utiliser l'aide publique au développement comme levier pour davantage d'investissements directs étrangers dans les pays africains. Ça, c'est aussi une piste qu'il faut regarder afin que, pour un peu réduire les risques auxquels le président Macky a fait allusion tout à l'heure, on peut utiliser l'aide publique au développement comme garantie pour les investissements directs étrangers dans les pays africains. Mais toutes ces possibilités, toutes ces belles perspectives ne peuvent être réalisées que si nous avons la paix et la sécurité. Malheureusement, dans beaucoup de régions africaines, nous avons des menaces terroristes, des menaces des organisations criminelles, des menaces de conflits intercommunautaires. C'est le cas du Sahel, c'est le cas du bassin du lac Tchad, où nous sommes confrontés à la menace terroriste. Menaces d'organisations qui sont transnationales, d'organisations qui n'ont pas de territoire, d'organisations qui n'ont pas de frontières. Et de la même façon que ces organisations n'ont pas de frontières, nous devons, au niveau des États africains, mutualiser nos capacités par-dessus les frontières. C'est ce que nous faisons dans le bassin du lac Tchad, avec la mise en place de la force mixte multinationale par les pays comme le Cameroun, le Nigeria, le Niger et le Tchad. C'est ce que nous faisons également dans le Sahel avec la force conjointe du G5 Sahel. Mais seulement nous déplorons une chose, nous déplorons l'absence de solidarité forte de la communauté internationale vis-à-vis du Sahel et vis-à-vis du bassin du lac Tchad. Par exemple, à plusieurs reprises, nous avons demandé à ce que la force conjointe que nous avons mise en place soit placée sous le chapitre 7 de la Charte des Nations Unies. Jusqu'ici, nous ne l'avons pas obtenu. Nous avons demandé également à ce que la MINUSMA, qui est la mission de stabilisation du Mali, soit dotée d'un mandat plus fort, d'un mandat plus offensif. Parce que le problème, comme cela a été dit au Mali, ce n'est pas de maintenir la paix. Le problème, c'est de faire la guerre au terrorisme. Et tant qu'on n'aura pas une victoire contre le terrorisme, il n'y aura pas de paix au Mali. Et c'est pour cela que nous avons demandé là également à ce que le Conseil de sécurité renforce le mandat de la MINUSMA afin que la MINUSMA puisse aider à lutter contre le terrorisme. Mais bien sûr, les problèmes que nous rencontrons aujourd'hui au niveau du Sahel ont été amplifiés par la crise libyenne, cela a été dit. Et la crise libyenne est un exemple de mauvaise gouvernance au niveau de la politique internationale. Il y a une mauvaise gouvernance politique au plan international et il va falloir là également, dans le cadre des réformes qui sont envisagées au niveau du Conseil de sécurité, que les propositions qui sont faites par l'Afrique, Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne la représentation de l'Afrique à cette instance, en termes de membres permanents du Conseil de sécurité, que cette proposition soit effectivement prise en compte. Et enfin, on ne peut trouver la paix au Sahel si on n'arrive pas à sortir de la crise libyenne. Je crois que cela a été effectivement dit. Voilà, Monsieur le Président, la contribution que j'ai voulu apporter. Il y a une liaison étroite entre sécurité et développement, entre développement et sécurité. Et je pense que ce nexus, cette liaison sécurité-développement est prise en compte dans notre agenda, par notre vision de l'agenda 2063. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and for the emphasis on peace for development, but also that we need to invest in development for peace, and that call for international cooperation that really invests in foreign direct investment for Africa, but also the political solutions for many of the conflict issues in Africa. It is now my honor to give the floor to His Excellency Azali Ousmane, the President of the Union of Comoros.
Excellences, mon cher frère Abdel Fattah El-Sisi, président de la République d'Égypte et en même temps président de l'Union africaine,
Excellences, Messieurs, Mesdames les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Excellences, mon frère Moussa Faki, président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, Excellences, Monsieur, mon frère, Monsieur Adesina, président de la Banque africaine de développement, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants de côte Atlantique, distingués invités, honorable assistance, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. C'est pour moi un réel plaisir de prendre part à ces échanges au plus haut niveau, consacrés à l'examen d'une thématique d'importance planétaire. Je remercie Son Excellence Monsieur El-Sisi et les autorités de la République arabe d'Égypte de l'accueil chaleureux réservé à nous tous ou bien à la délégation du bureau des Comores depuis notre arrivée dans ce beau pays, frères et amis, et des excellentes dispositions prises pour assurer le bon déroulement de notre séjour dans cette belle ville d'Aswan. Monsieur le Président, honorable assistance, je remercie sincèrement les organisateurs de présentes assises pour le choix porté sur le thème de la paix et du développement durable en Afrique et pour l'opportunité qui nous est offerte de partager nos vues sur l'avenir de notre continent. En effet, la paix et la sécurité constituent les piliers de la stabilité. Elles sont le socle de tout développement. La paix et la stabilité s'installent durablement par le renforcement des institutions, tant au niveau local, régional, continental ou national. Lorsque les institutions sont solides et efficientes, elles nourrissent la promotion des valeurs universelles que nous avons en partage et les libertés fondamentales, l'état de droit, la bonne gouvernance, l'élargissement de la participation démocratique, l'égalité du genre, ainsi de suite. En Afrique, dans notre continent, la paix est gravement malade. Elle est assaillie de toutes parts par des foyers de tension nés de guerres tribales et fratricides. Elle est menacée par le terrorisme sous toutes ses formes, qui se nourrit et se fortifie par la précarité, du mal-vivre et du désespoir qui sévissent dans beaucoup de nos sociétés et surtout notre jeunesse. Fragile dans sa nature et sa constitution, la paix est mise à mal également à rude épreuve dans notre continent par les effets des changements climatiques qui n'épargnent aucun pays dans le monde. Ce phénomène est fléau résultant de l'attitude et de la mauvaise gestion de l'homme frappe de plein fouet certains de nos pays et empêche l'Afrique de tirer profit des ressources précieuses et des potentialités qui sont les siennes. Le changement climatique ravage les économies nationales des pays, et notamment les petits États insulaires en développement, dont l'Union des Comores fait partie, qui méritent une attention toute particulière de la part de la communauté internationale. Honorable assistance, devant un constat aussi alarmant, les dirigeants que nous sommes devons adopter capables de rectifier le cours actuel des choses. Nous devons donc agir vite et bien, sans plus attendre. Deux formes d'action s'imposent à nous, très modestement. D'une part, engager une gestion plus saine et responsable de nos pays en consolidant les acquis processus démocratiques en cours pour assurer l'état de droit, la bonne gouvernance et la promotion des droits humains. D'autre part, mobiliser davantage la solidarité internationale pour qu'il soit apporté aux pays nécessiteux tout l'appui et le soutien requis dans la poursuite de leurs efforts et programmes de développement. Mais en effet, toutes ces aides doivent s'appuyer sur les pays et leur capacité à les gérer. En effet, la solidarité internationale est une source importante de vie et d'espérance que nous devons à tout prix préserver, entretenir et promouvoir. Elle est notre meilleur allié pour contribuer à l'effort de paix et de développement durable en Afrique et dans le monde, unis et solidaires dans la réalisation des objectifs durables, nous gagnerons la bataille contre la pauvreté et la misère et assurerons la promotion d'une ère de paix, de sécurité et de développement en Afrique et dans le monde. Vive la coopération internationale. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is now my privilege and honor to give the floor to our host, His Excellency Abdel Fattah El-Sisi, the Chairman of the African Union and President of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
شكرا جزيلا وبسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واسمحوا لي السادة القادة أن أنا أرحب بكم مجددا وبكم جميعا وأنقل لكم تحيات فخامة الرئيس رامافوزا واعتذاره عن عدم يعني حضوره لأنه هو كان موجود معنا بالأمس، لكن حصلت تطورات في جنوب أفريقيا خاصة بالفيضانات اللي موجودة هناك، والحقيقة كان ده سبب لعودته مرة أخرى وقطع زيارته لينا وما كملش زيارة. فأنا بقول لكم
That's why I have to convey his apologies. Indeed, I should like to thank President Mantisan for his birthday. Tonight we are going to celebrate his birthday as we have our dinner. Well, speaking about what was said in terms of the threats that are facing Africa, let me first of all, speaking of, despite all the difficulties, all the menaces and threats, however, I still have hope and optimism. Probably we have immense challenges which would give an opposite idea. However, I believe that what we have done in Africa in terms of great strides would indeed generate hope. And I hope that I think what happens in many African countries would stress this. We need an integrated approach given the immense challenges in the continent. In addition to what we have to seek in terms of sustainable development, we have been moving along these lines in the African continent, at the level of the African Union, at the level of countries. Speaking about this kind of sustainable development would indeed bolster our unity and security and would help us achieve what we aspire to in terms of objectives in Africa. Let me speak about what we had in Egypt, about the experience of Egypt. I believe that what happened in Egypt is indeed a micro image of what we are living through in Africa. 2013 in Egypt, we had to face immense challenges, including potential civil war, terrorism, and you had the choice either to face up to terrorism and to stop all efforts for development, or to consolidate development and give up on confronting terrorism. That's why I believe that in Africa we have to move on development and consolidate peace and security in Africa at the same time. If we wish to go beyond what we have now, speaking about sustainable development, we're speaking about continental infrastructure. I've been speaking with Mr. Mahfouz yesterday, and that was the hit or the target. If our underground if what happened in South Africa was the result of the stop of electric stations in South Africa, if we've had the kind of infrastructure that connect us together, or even at the level of certain geographic regions in Africa, indeed it would have been able to face this problem. I've been saying this, repeating this all the time. We cannot have great hopes for Africa unless we have a strong and developed infrastructure that would connect together countries of the continent in terms of railways, of roads, of electric power networks. And as said by His Excellency, if Asia is competitive in terms of the price of energy, it is because they are making the best use of the possibilities of transportation available to them. I
can say that in Egypt now that we have 20% of reserve in terms of electric power that we can transfer to our brothers in Africa. If we have just had this kind of network connecting together African countries, it could have been very easy to transfer energy at a lower cost than what was said by our brother at the rate of 14 cents per kilo. It could have been just half the price. Speaking about sustainable development, if we wish to have a real leap in this area, I can just say if we have direct linkage between Egypt and Chad, for example, all the products of Chad could have been easily transported to Egypt very easily at a low cost, beneficial to both countries, Egypt and Chad. If we are dreaming of sustainable development, and we have been moving on the African free trade zone, this is an important step. But if we really wish to have a continental sustainable development, we just have a continental infrastructure plans to be implemented. Egypt is just the micro example of what happens. We have been moving in rehabilitation, developing infrastructure projects in Egypt in an immense manner. We have provided local job opportunities to our people until through our infrastructure developed, we can say that Egypt is capable of added value in other areas like agriculture industry and others, either in Egypt or in the African countries. So our experience as we deal with the challenges in Egypt, I'm sure that you have the same challenges in African countries. We only have one drive, sustainable development and consolidating peace and security. If the Sahel countries are speaking about the terrorism challenge, we still have this in Egypt, but it had been greater, much greater than what we have now. We have managed to stand against terrorism, along with launching an over-ambitious plan for sustainable development in Egypt. If we're speaking about terrorism in Egypt, in the Sahel, or in any other zone in Africa or outside, this called for collective efforts, for collective work. We are ready, along with our brothers in Africa, and I've said this before in other meetings, that we are willing to cooperate as much as we can, because we cannot boast of immense potentials to be able to provide complete assistance, but whatever we can do in terms of assistance, in terms of helping with the military equipment to our brothers in Al-Sahel. Terrorism can only be confronted in a collective manner by those countries facing terrorism, along with our brothers in Africa and in the rest of the world. Another point, we have to be very decisive. We have to be decisive as to those countries that are helping terrorism. We shouldn't have a narrow-minded vision as to the assistance that could be provided by these countries one way or another. I don't like to dwell on this, but we must have a collective voice vis-à-vis terrorism, a decisive stand against those countries supporting terrorism, because those terrorist groups cannot continue with the offensive unless they receive huge material, military, and even moral assistance. Now I go back to peace and security system. We actually have this system in Africa. We have ready forces in Africa. We have the staff commission, early warning commission, and the framework plan for urbanization, and we have the WISE group or panel
In this respect, we must reinforce the ready African forces at the various African regions so that they can make considerable contribution towards the establishment of peace and security and help in facing and countering those challenges in the continent. This month in Egypt, we're going to have a conference
in order to look for the guidelines helping regulating this force. We have the capabilities that we could confront our challenges. It is inconceivable for the challenge in Sahel and not to overcome it. In Egypt, we had an enormous challenge. This doesn't mean that we don't help others, but Egypt was suddenly facing terrorism, and Egypt was combating terrorism on behalf of the entire world, not only in Sinai, but at the western borders with Libya. We were the first to be afflicted by what is, and hit by what is taking place in Libya. We don't want it to affect our stability and security.
That together we can stand up to this menace which affects our economic potentials for development and implement the objectives of our people. We can only have this choice to stand together, particularly among those countries that are confronting this challenge. I tell you, Egypt is ready as much as it can to help these countries in confronting this terrorism. And I have just been deliberating with the leaders attending our meeting today. We're not going to speak about this in public now until we crystallize the matter in something concrete, to say that we are ready to cope with this problem, and we hope that within the next months we'll be able to find a solution, a comprehensive solution to the Libyan crisis. Of course, it's going to be a political solution, so that the source of terrorism, to put an end to the source of terrorism, to avoid this problem even in Egypt as well. Being the chairperson of the African Union, I can say that what we have managed to do during the past years, and including Egypt's tenure of office in the African Union, will continue after Egypt turns over the presidency to the upcoming chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and for reminding us how important it is that we take an integrated approach, and that integrated approach will be needed as we invest in key infrastructure to leapfrog development. But you also showed that it needs a collective effort on the security side as well to make progress. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to my brother, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, who has for the last few years been trying to move 2063 agenda into implementation, but also grappling with the security side of our challenges on the continent. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Amina. اسمحوا لي في البداية أن أتقدم بالشكر.
Allow me to extend my thanks and gratitude to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi, the President of Egypt and the chairperson of the AU, and also for the initiative of Aswan Forum for Development, for Peace and Sustainable Development. The place, the venue and the timing is very symbolic. We are in Egypt. Everyone recognizes Egypt's position in the world, in Africa, and for humanity. We are in Aswan. At this location, the two parts of Africa come across together, Sub-Saharan Africa and North Saharan Africa, and the nexus is the immortal River Nile. Ladies and gentlemen, it is difficult to take the floor after the President of the Republic. And also especially in this Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and Development. This is a reality that has the multifaceted reality. And this situation is important for Africa. The history of this continent, it shows great sufferings and slavery by others, and the colonization by other countries, and also the apartheid and the injustice. It attested a lot of sufferings, which certainly had its impact. Despite the heritage, Africa is advancing, and it advances seriously. It has to implement its constitutions according to the African Union. It is important to reform in order to be for the countries to go towards development. It is essential for all of us to coordinate. We have a vision. We have also an architecture for the countries, and also we have our institutions and constitutions and instruments like the standby force and other agencies. We have everything. The problem that is raised now in Africa is to settle the conflicts all over the continent, the internal problems within the countries. That is, and the exterior, that is the terrorism, the cross-borders criminals, and the smuggling of the arms and of the human beings. We are not the origins of this phenomena. This phenomena is transcontinental. Africa is also the heads of states who took the floor here described the situation in the African countries, and also in the Sahel and the Sahel, African Sahel countries. More of them. More than that, we represent represent more than the quarter of the UN member states. Terrorism and other phenomena threaten peace and security, global peace and security. What is the tool for the protection of peace and security worldwide? We talked a lot about this topic. No one had listened to us, nor no one had followed upon us. So I believe the efforts exerted and the original initiatives and the organic initiatives within the basin, Niger, and the incidents in Niger and Libya. So therefore we have to encourage the actions on countering terrorism and other menace. I'm aware of the situation that those countries are going through, and I feel this all these incidents since I took office in the African Union. Hence, I think on the necessity of mobilizing the African solidarity, the peace plans, and the peace aids are worth more than $100 million. However, 50% of them showed solidarity, and 50% demonstrate any solidarity at all. This aids haven't only reached the Sahel, but also the adjacent countries. The battle on governance is of our interest. We are interested in the reform of the Security Council. I'm pleased that those deliberations are head by my sister, Mrs. Amina Mohammed. I know that there are numerous countries who back us. However, the situation in Security Council keep the situation stalled. We don't progress. I cannot add to what the other presidents have added and expressed. What is the role that we should play? What is the new responsibility that we have to assume? They said if you intervene, you will impede the procedures. What's taking place? Since 8 years, we find that the battles are continued in Africa. Millions of the Africans work as agents, and they are, when we have mercenaries in Libya, or there are millions within the Libyan prisons. The presidents are aware of the situation, and they hold talks. So we have to think of these threats in the entire continent, and this will be continued the agenda of 2063. And we have as well a pilot project in Mali. So we have strategies within the substantial architecture. The chair has the right to implement them. If we we are after integration. It is difficult to exchange trade and commodities. It is difficult. It is extremely difficult. So it is also, we face difficulty in crossing borders without having visa. This is very difficult nowadays. The resources could reach 1 billion. The future is for us. We have to open the institutions and universities and the military academy, as well as markets for everyone. There is no alternative. We have to we have to share the same destiny, and we shouldn't sell our destiny to others. Thank you.
Sobering reflections, which really just prove that the challenges that we have, that are realities, but the gap between that and the aspirations, there's not enough solidarity globally and regionally to close them. And those frustrations we need to address by channeling them towards much more effort made behind credible and genuine partnerships for Africa's Aspiration 2063. At this point, I would like to turn to the floor to, again, another brother, His Excellency Akinwumi Adesina, the President of the African Development Bank, who is also spearheading and perhaps many more solutions in leveraging the investments that we need, and the foreign direct investment in particular, to Agenda 2063. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, my dear sister Amina. Your Excellency, President El-Sisi, thank you very much, sir, for inviting me to this particular session. I thank you for your leadership, your vision, your passion and commitment, and all the excellent work that you've been doing as chair of the African Union. I'd like to also thank Your Excellencies, the heads of states that are here. We thank you for all your support and all that you have been doing to make sure that we actually secure the peace. But once we've been able to secure the peace, Your Excellencies, the most critical thing is to make sure that we can have the dividends of the peace. And so getting that dividend of the peace is critical, and that's part of the development part, my sister, that you were talking about. And for us at the African Development Bank, we're working very closely with on Agenda 2063, but also with the issue of SDGs. When you elected me as president, and I'm most honored for that, of the bank 4 years ago, we set out to do that through what we call a high-five strategy, to light up and empower Africa, to feed Africa, to integrate Africa, to industrialize Africa, and to improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. And actually, the work of the United Nations shows very clearly that if Africa achieves all these high fives, it will have achieved 90% of the Agenda 2063, and also 90% of the Sustainable Development Goals. So these high fives, we see them as accelerators, if you wish, of these continental and also African agenda. Just to give you a sense of what's been achieved, as the Deputy UN Secretary General said, in the last 4 years alone, we were able to connect, you mentioned the issue of electricity. We connected 18 million people through our financing to electricity. For agriculture, President Buhari mentioned that in his remarks about the importance of agriculture. We were able to support over 141 million people to have access to food security via agricultural technologies. In terms of access to finance, which President Macky Sall said, we were able to connect 13 million people to have access to finance. Infrastructure, it is so important. President El-Sisi mentioned the importance of infrastructure. Transport, President Buhari also mentioned the same thing. We were able to support 141 million people to have access to improved transport, whether it's by road, whether it's by rail, whether it's by port, and so on. And critically, we don't also talk about this much, is the importance of water and sanitation. And we've been able to connect well over 60 million people to that. Now, I wanted to say that resources are fundamental, and I'm president of the African Development Bank, and so I agree on that. On the issue of resources, I would like to thank you very much, Heads of States, for supporting the African Development Bank to mobilize more resources for Africa's development. You supported us with all the shareholders on the general capital increase of the bank. With your support, we were able to secure $115 billion of increase in the general capital of your bank, which is the highest since the bank was established in 1964. So I think everybody should help me to thank them, because this is tremendous for us. And second, I want to thank President Buhari, because the bank also has the Nigerian Trust Fund. And I want to thank you, sir, for approving the renewal of that fund that allows us to support least developed countries. And finally is the FAD, what we call the African Development Fund, which allows us to support low-income countries and fragile states that we've been talking about here. Again, thank you to your support, and thanks for all our donors globally. We were in South Africa just last week, and we were able to get a replenishment of that fund to the tune of $7.6 billion, which is 32% higher than the last one that we had. And so it is providing more resources. I'm sure my senior brother, President Idris Deby, has been pushing me on this. You'll be happy to know that we have a lot more resources to support the low-income countries. Just to end, I agree fully on the issue of this question of debt that President Macky Sall was raising. When countries face fragility, as many of our countries do, the share of expenditure, as President Yusufu said, security expenditure, he says, almost 25 to 29%. All that is counted towards the debt of the countries. Security is fundamental. Without it, we cannot have any peace. The question that we must ask ourselves is, we have the instruments as multilateral development banks when there are exogenous financial shocks or economic shocks to deal with that. We can do that. But we don't have instruments that allows us to deal with exogenous security shocks that have this kind of global and also regional spillover effects. I was with President Deby Adesina. I have a challenge. My National Assembly is telling me I'm spending so much money on security. If I pull back, what happens? So I think it behoves on all of us in the international community to figure out how we can help countries to address these exogenous security shocks that are independent of Africa, by the way. And I'm very pleased that when we were in Berlin for the G20 summit with Chancellor Merkel, I had this conversation, President El-Sisi, you were there, with Kristalina, the IMF managing director, that we must find a way to have instruments that allow our countries to be able to cope with these shocks, because we cannot displace development financing. We have to make sure that we allow them to be able to do that. So finally, I want to say, in terms of investments, Africa is doing extremely well. Just 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, we held the Africa Investment Forum in South Africa. We had over 1,600 investors from over 61 countries outside of Africa. And we were able to mobilize investments, interest, of $40.1 billion in less than 72 hours. What are they seeing? They are seeing a different Africa. They are seeing a more peaceful Africa, a more prosperous Africa, a more determined Africa. And thank you to your leadership. We can do even better. In my view, if you are investing and you are not investing in Africa, you are actually not investing. And thanks for your leadership, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you very much, President Adesina. I believe that we are probably running out of time, and this has been a very exciting discussion, and I know that this will feed into the sessions that continue over the day and into tomorrow. What I would like to do is take advantage of just this microphone to ask 2 questions to 2 of our leaders here. We've heard from President Adesina, and I know that just over a week ago we were in Senegal discussing debt sustainability. So, President Macky Sall, if you were to ask the international community, of which there are many representatives in this audience, one thing on the debt issue that changes the narrative, what would it be? And then I would have a follow-up question to His Excellency President Buhari on the governance and corruption issue. What would be your message to try to get that agenda that you chair in the African continent a thing of the past? President Macky Sall, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, chère sœur Amina. Ce que nous allons...
Thank you, Sister Amina. What we have actually done was to resolve this problem that's combating terrorism. But I must say that we suffer shortage of 20 to 24% of our budget, which is allocated to fighting terrorism. And this, of course, leads to a budget deficit. 23% deficit is indeed alarming. In addition to key military expenses that have to be spent, there is a maximum of the development that we can engage in. You know that we can set a limit to our development. EMOA sets debt as 70%. That's why we are in need of every little possibility to redress this problem. Terrorism, climate change aggravate the situation as well. Africa has to uncontrolled debt. We have to extend the period of debt settlements in many areas so that the multilateral institutions can help the African continent considering the situation. And after World War II, we
were victims. That's why we believe that the outside world should help Africa.
Probably a tough question because corruption often fights back. What would be your advice here as we go forward? How do we bring an end to corruption?
Well, at our stage of development, partisan politics that succeed several military changes, one has to be on the ground to really appreciate the trauma the developing countries in Africa we are going through. It is absolutely necessary to make sure that we encourage good neighborhoods like the Lake Chad Basin countries, the Sahel region, and we appeal to North African countries to please see how they can stabilize the situation in Libya, because the arms that go to Sahel, can be checked if the Libyan situation is stabilized. There are very serious issues created by climate change. For us in Nigeria, I think our neighbors will know better. Neighborhood to Sahara Desert, population growth, shrinking of the Lake Chad, where it is affecting more than 30 million people. And the culture of the people across the Sahel in terms of having animals. Now, the forests are no longer available. The farms are not yielding as much as they used to. We thank God, we thank technology, but much more can be done to help Africa in terms of confronting the climate change very, very seriously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you will join me in thanking the panel for what has been an extremely rich discussion today. First, I believe that it's crystal clear, as we've heard, that Africa does have a bold and achievable vision through Agenda 2063, as well as their commitment to the 2030 Agenda and the 17 SDGs. Our shared challenge is ensuring effective coordination for this implementation and the opportunities that it provides. Our collective promise is to leave no one behind. A holistic approach to building and sustaining peace with sustainable development at its core will be essential to building the Africa that we want. The outcomes of this meeting will be informing the upcoming review of the 2020 UN Peacebuilding Architecture that is currently underway. Our discussions here today have emphasized that sustained peace and development requires inclusive solutions, both from the region, but also from the international community. Humanitarian action, development, and peace-building programs are not a substitute for the political engagement to tackle sources of violence, of corruption, of dissatisfaction, and the other impediments to development in Africa. Minorities, women, and youth, who comprise 3/4 of Africa's population, will be critical to shaping that future, and we need to fully integrate their views and make space for them to participate in political and economic processes. Inclusive and sustainable development won't only be an end to itself, but it is also the best defense against the risk of violent conflict, but also corruption. We believe that the 2030 and the 2063 Agenda all call upon us to act with a sense of urgency, particularly on climate change in the environment. As partners, the UN remains committed to advocate and mobilize this work. Strong cooperation in the international community and within the region will be critical if we are to achieve these aspirations. The Agenda 2063's vision, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an integrated and prosperous, peaceful Africa that we strive for, but that's driven by our citizens, representing a dynamic force in the global arena. And that's within the power of the African people to achieve. It is also within the reforms of the African Union that they try to be fit for purpose, and partners like the UN, that we could achieve this. Let me take 1 minute. As Amina Mohammed, if I don't say this, I'll take the cover of my president here as I say it. As the highest serving woman in the United Nations, sitting on this panel today as an endangered species needs a commitment from our leaders to vote women into office and to have panels here that are at least 50% women. Not, Excellencies, not because we look better than you do, but because we've got a lot up here to offer in the development of the African region and its people. I thank you. Finally, let me thank His Excellency President El-Sisi for this incredible initiative of bringing together leaders in Africa to achieve our Agenda 2063 with a big focus on infrastructure we need for sustainable development and sustaining peace. I thank you.
I would like to extend my thanks to the heads of states for the enriching panel, and now we move to the second item of the Aswan Forum, that is the signing of the host country for the African Center for Reconstruction and Development post-conflict period. So this comes with the Egypt's pioneering role under the presidency of his and the sponsorship of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs Sameh Shukri, and His Excellency Mr. Musa Faqih, the chairperson of the African Commission. Kindly proceed to sign the agreement. Thank you for His Excellency Minister Sameh Shukri and His Excellency Mr. Musa Faqih. Now we come to the end of first session.
States, thank you so much for this rich discussion. Thank you.